Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well this evening. We have, let me see who's on the stream tonight. We have Pack Bandit. Great to see you. One order of sleaze, please, for the size of Hartlepool. Very nice. Boomer Rage, great to see you. We have Derek, great to see you too. Killer, great to have you on. Hope you're well. We have Raven, great to see you. Tiny Demolition Lover, great to have you on. Hope you're well. We have FSM is the dog. FSM definitely is the dog. We have Anne. Great to see you, Anne. We have Annie or Anne. Chatty Rat. I love the name Chatty Rat. Great to see you. Tony Blair. Great to have you on, Tony. Hope you're well. What do you think of the election results? How times have changed? Let the Tory votes pile high. Catherine, great to see you. Geraldine, great to have you on once again. Jean T, great to see you. Hope you're well. We have Mark Sanders, great to have you on, Mark. Hope you're well. We have Glasgow Case, great to see you. Hope you're well. Who else have we got? Joe Green, great to see you. Giorgio, great to have you on, Giorgio. Darren. We also have Enzo the God, great to see you, Enzo. The Button Blog, great to see you. Pedro, great to see you. Andy, and I'll have to go down 269 viewers tonight, so I better go very quickly. We have Zoe Castles, Tom, great to see you. Katrina, great to see you. Pete, great to have you on. Conservator, great to have you on. Hope you're well. Drums to the Bass, great to see you. Inconsequential, great to have you on. And I have to go all the way down to the very bottom. Apologies, I can't say hello to everyone. Bowler Hat Man, I see is on the stream too. Hope you're very well. And actually, just before I respond to Valerio's super chat, and thanks very much to Valerio, I'd love to do a response video with Bowler Hat Man, because Bowler Hat Man did one on Wednesday, I think it was. Wednesday or Thursday. Where he responded to a Jeff Taylor video, but on a live stream, and he invited me on, so I'd love to do that with him sometime. So we'll have to get together and work something out and organize something. I'd love to do that, because I'm a big fan of Jeff Taylor, as most of you know. Valeria, thank you so much once again for that super chat. Hi Max, UK has to change its electoral system. Yes, I agree 100%. I'm going to talk more about this, of course, during the night, but the Labour Party need to team up with the Liberal Democrats, the Greens, and anyone else and form a coalition, form a progressive coalition, and then and try and get into power using that coalition. And the first thing they have to do is change the electoral system, change it to a proportional representation system, because the first past the post system is not democratic. And it just continues to prop up the Conservative Party. So they need to change that. Audio's a bit low, Max. And let me see if there's something I can do. Okay, hope my audio is a little bit better. We have Reagan Ali. Thank you so much, Reagan. I put my bins out on voting day for Count Bin Face, but instead it's got it's for the Labour Party. Very well said. Thanks for that super chat. I wonder how Count Bin Face will do. Hopefully he'll do quite well. So guys, unless you've been living under a rock, things have not gone very well for the Labour Party today. Audio is fine, great, okay. I seen a message, somebody had said that it wasn't doing too well. So the Labour Party in England are doing extremely badly. Labour Party in Wales are doing slightly better. Labour Party in Scotland, is there still a Labour Party in Scotland? But in England, where it's predominant, it's been a very, very bad day. And we'll get into a bit more detail about that later. Before I jump onto the main first article, I want to say thanks to everyone for coming. Make sure to smash the like button, and remember you can support the channel by sending a super chat or by becoming a Patreon. And I want to say thanks to Gordon Ross for taking the time to do the live stream the other day, and I'm hoping to do some more live streams in the near future. Labour Party is full of nasty little people. What do you expect? Labour doing okay in Wales apparently, and most likely in London too. Yeah, I'm a fan of the Plaid Cymru. Cymru. I know I'm mispronouncing it. But anyone to beat the Tories. So if Labour are doing well in Wales, then I'd support that. I prefer an independence party in Wales, but I definitely take the Labour Party over the Conservatives any day. Binface is London's last hope, yes. So there has been some shock on Twitter about some of the votes that are coming in London at the moment, which is just the first count in some of the boroughs that are pro-Tory. And it's spooked a lot of people online, but I think it's because a lot of the votes have not yet been counted, and they haven't counted votes in Labour-leaning boroughs yet. They're counting the Conservative-leaning ones at the moment, and the Conservative candidate for mayor is leading Sadiq Khan at the moment, but that's expected to change. Hopefully it changes. Deli Blase, hope you're well. Great to have you on. Allshore, it's great to see you too. Can you wake up when I do tomorrow so I can watch you live tomorrow? Yeah, Bowler Hat Man, I love Bowler Hat Man's live streams on Saturday morning, but I'm very lazy on Saturday morning, so I normally sleep in, so I generally see it later on. Will Bailey do a Donald Trump? I really... I hope not. You mean like storm the Capitol? What? Or directed people to storm the Capitol? Weakest Labour Party ever. Too weak to take down May, and not even weaker against, and now even weaker against Doris. Yes. Sugar Free, great to see you. Hope you're well. Devolution was not a good idea. Tony Blair says devolution was not. Devolution probably hasn't served the Labour Party well, but it has served the Scottish people very well. So, in a sense, yes, it has been a success. Because I care more about people than I do about parties. But the Labour Party need to form coalitions. That's their only way out of this. They can't continue to prop up first past the post. Now, you're probably many people are asking, well, if first past the post is such a failure, why aren't the Labour Party dumping it? And one of the reasons, two of the reasons are, two reasons are so. One reason is that if you are an MP in a safe seat, you want to maintain first past the post. So it's going to protect you. And I think the other reason is that there's a struggle within the Labour Party. There's the centrists versus the left. And there are people in the party who are not interested in actually winning elections. They just want to maintain their position. And I think if there was proportional representation, the Labour Party would change. And people who are currently in power within the party, I'm not talking about MPs or councillors or elected officials. I'm talking about people who are operating within the party. Hi Nico, great to see you. They don't want to lose power, and if there was a proportional representation model brought in, it would damage their position. They would weaken their position. Served Ramoners very well, says Rigo. I'm not sure what you mean by that. Labour needs to learn to read the room. Yes, sugar free, I agree. Things can only get better. Things can only get better. They can't get any worse. They can probably get a little bit worse. Probably the results for Labour in Scotland are going to be pretty bad. Artemis, great to see you on the stream. Hope you're well. I know, Artemis, it's been a very bad day for people in England. Really hope that Labour are able to salvage something from it. I'm afraid what's going to happen is, and I hope I'm wrong here, but I'm afraid what's going to happen is that the Labour Party is going to start tearing itself apart. The moderates are going to start blaming the Corbynistas for not being on board, and you could almost, like there's a grain of truth on both sides. And then the Corbynistas are going to say, well, Corbyn was right. Keir Starmer was wrong. He moved to the centre. He moved towards the right. He alienated voters. He wasn't charismatic. He wasn't as charismatic as Jeremy Corbyn. Although Jeremy Corbyn was not charismatic, he was charismatic within the Labour Party, but with voters he was not as charismatic as they had believed. Any good news from Scotland? Well, the SNP, if you're an SNP supporter or an independent supporter, the SNP are doing extremely well, it seems, so far in Scotland. They have taken a few seats from the Labour Party and the Conservatives. I think they have lost one to the Liberal Democrats, but I could be wrong there. Maybe time for a new party to rival the Conservatives. Yeah, you need to, I think maybe not even a party, but a coalition. A coalition just to get PR in. And if you had proportional representation, the Conservatives would be finished. Because the Conservatives would split up into different parties. You'd have the moderates, you'd have the right wing, you'd have the pro-Europeans, you'd have the Brexiteers. They would all divide up into different factions, because it wouldn't be sustainable to keep the party together. The party would eventually fall apart. What's holding it together at the moment is that they want power. That's all they care about. That's their driving force. And they're able to convince everyone, you do whatever we say and we maintain power. But if you have different factions who think that they can get power on their own, then they will break off. SNP, good day in Scotland. Conservatives, good day in England. And that's what I think, and that's what I thought was going to happen eventually anyway. What you're going to see is two distinct countries after this. Scotland on the left with the SNP and England on the right with the Conservatives. I'm not saying that England is a conservative country. I'm just saying that's the way it is politically at the moment. The people are different, because if you look at the turnout was extremely low in some areas. The working class voted for the Conservatives because they didn't like Keir Starmer, for example. Biggest revelation is that the culture war is here to stay. Tories have indeed absorbed the Brexit vote. The right is united, so a coalition on the left is needed to be viable. I agree 100%. Video games nostalgia. 100%. The Conservatives are united around Brexit. They're united around the culture wars. So you need to counter them in some way. I don't know how to. On the culture war issues, I don't know. I'm not as informed about these things, because you also have the media behind them, and the culture wars are an extremely difficult thing to deal with. They're extremely difficult to handle, because you if you try and tell the truth, you come across as unpatriotic, and if you don't wave a flag enough, you're considered unpatriotic. If you do things that are rational, you're considered unpatriotic. And it's very difficult to get over that. You need to try and define what patriotism is. And for me, patriotism is actually looking after people, looking after the poor, the disabled, ending homelessness, closing food banks, replacing it with the state. That is what, for me, it was patriotism. Not waving a flag or worshipping a statue. The Cummins files would be interesting. Yeah, Cummins could be someone who could bring down Boris Johnson, but I've always said Boris Johnson will be brought down by within. It will not be from without. I had hoped that Cummins would have done more damage at this stage, but what seems to be happening is some things stick to Boris Johnson, other things don't stick, But the problem with the things that stick is that they stick for a few days and then we move on. Like Boris Johnson's statement comments about the bodies piling high. We're not talking about that anymore. Some people are, but the vast majority of people have moved on. That's not how it should be. That should be a sackable offence. But he's still there. And he's actually stronger now. So it didn't actually have the effect we thought it would. Deep down, I felt that this is something that's going to be a problem for a week and then it'll move on. And that's exactly what's happened. And we'll find Boris Johnson saying something else. He will even have recordings of Boris Johnson saying horrible things. But the problem is that it will stay on the front pages for a few days and then we'll move on to something else. Patriotism is making the country best if it can be for everyone. Yeah, see, that's the thing is the people who call themselves patriots and wave flags or whatever, they actually don't care about making the country better for everyone. They want to make the country, quote unquote, better for them or for a small group of people. How can you actually make the country better if you don't look at what's wrong with the country? These people say there's nothing wrong with the country. Everything is great. How dare you say there's something wrong with the country? The Express and the Daily Mail. Yeah, Tories don't care they like Johnson. Yeah, they don't care about. I think Hartlepool has demonstrated that the public don't care about anything. They don't care about corruption. They don't care about 140,000 dead. They don't care about Boris Johnson's approach to that. They don't care about PPE contracts being handed out to the friends of the Conservative Party or donors to the Conservative Party. They don't care about any of these things. They don't care about the impact of Brexit. They don't care that they were lied to about Brexit. So what do they actually care about? They care about being told that everything is going well. Spanner power. Maybe the Labour Party need to start lying to them. I don't know what they should lie about. Look, I don't think it's a good idea to lie, but these people don't care about the truth. Very low turnout in Hartlepool. See, this is another problem, is that why did the Labour Party not turn out in Hartlepool? Because if the turnout was low and the Conservatives won, obviously if turnout had been high, the Labour Party would have won. So the Labour Party need to turn people out. Why did people not turn out? That's what needs to be asked. We don't like Keir Starmer. This is another problem I have with many people in local elections, is you're not voting for Keir Starmer. You're not voting for Boris Johnson. You're voting for the party representative in that area. In some cases it's an MP, in other cases it's a councillor. But the people will say, I'm voting because I like Boris Johnson. I'm voting because I like what Boris did with Brexit. But you're talking about your councillor, your MP. Anyway, what would Labour have gained? What would Labour gain by exerting itself off the seat? I'm not sure I understand your comment. Sorry. This chat is too fast. Please write slower. Maybe I can slow it down. But we're up to 500 viewers. Okay, let's move on to the first report from The Guardian. It says here, tell me guys if it's a bit small. Maybe I can actually zoom it a little bit. Okay, so it says here, Keir Starmer concedes Labour has lost trust of working people. Leader says party considering moving headquarters out of London to show it represents the whole country after May election defeats. This, on the surface, sounds a little bit pathetic. Yes, let's move the headquarters out of London so that we're closer to the people. Not the people of London, To hell with the people of London. You know, there's this idea that, well, if it's in London, it means it's in the liberal elite. But there are working class people in London. Anyway, on the surface, I would disagree with this. But when people are fickle, people will say, I'll vote for Boris Johnson because I like his hair or I like his lies. Then maybe it's a good idea to move the headquarters out of London. Anyway, the Conservatives inflicted a historic by-election defeat on Labour and regained the Tees Valley mayoralty by a landslide as Keir Starmer conceded his party had lost the trust of the working people across England. The Labour leader, who called the local election results bitterly disappointing, is considering moving his party's headquarters out of London to reflect Labour's determination, to show that it represents the whole country, party sources told The Guardian. Once again, this is sort of window dressing. I don't think it's going to change a lot. Perhaps it might change some people's minds, but anyway, he's also expected to reshuffle his top team and launch an across-the-board review of the party's policies. See, this is the problem with the shadow cabinet. We don't know who they are. Who are these people? I think you'd find it difficult for many people. If you just go to Hartlepool, for example, and you ask people on the street, who is the leader of the Labour Party? I think many people would struggle to tell you it was Keir Starmer. Some people would probably say Jeremy Corbyn. Some people might say somebody else. But of the people who would actually say, yes, Keir Starmer is the leader of the Labour Party, if you were to ask them the names of some of the shadow cabinet, I think they would struggle. I think the vast majority of people wouldn't know anyone in the shadow cabinet. You know, Keir Starmer has been leader of the opposition for over a year, or about a year now, I think, or over a year. This is not acceptable. Look, I've said, and we were talking about this before when I did the Grassroots for Europe with Phil from A Different Bias. The Labour Party don't have any online presence. How is that possible? You know, the Labour Party could have somebody like Phil, or, you know, blow my own trumpet here, someone like myself, someone like Bowler Hatman or Allshorts, or Mark Vestling, or many YouTubers, people like that, who have somebody like that who's interviewing members of the Labour Party, interviewing people on this, members of the public, talking about issues that are important to people, homelessness, corruption, you know, loudmouths, no offense, but people who have contact with the public, people who are presenting issues, attacking the opposition, in the sense of the Labour Party. The Labour Party the Conservative Party, the Labour Party don't actually have any sort of real presence online. You know, if you don't want to go that way, you could go in the way of Novara Media, for example. But Novara Media is more on the left within the Labour Party. It's not a Labour Party voice online. They represent part of the Labour Party, the more left side of it. They're extremely critical of Keir Starmer and the moderates within the Labour Party. So it's not, they wouldn't be a model to use, but something like that. Every day, you uploading videos about issues affecting people, interviews with members of Parliament or councillors or something, criticising the Conservatives or criticising the other parties, something like that. I really don't understand how the Labour Party don't have that type of presence. Labour has UMax, but the problem is I'm critical of Labour. That's why they wouldn't want somebody like me, and they wouldn't like maybe someone like Phil or someone like Allshorts or Borough Hatman or whoever, because they would criticize them, and they wouldn't want that. Maybe that's one of the reasons why many of us have the followings that we have, is that because we are asking questions, because we're criticizing both sides, yes, we have our biases, but we're not afraid to say, look, the Labour Party are doing something wrong here. And I guess if you had a presence, it would be difficult for that presence to remain neutral or to criticize itself. There are a lot of issues, but they need to do something. Phil made a video on the lack of Labour on social media. It's a serious problem. They need to do something. Bowler Hatman has joined Labour. Yay! I think Phil is also a member of the Labour Party. Amid tensions at the top of Labour as recriminations flew on Friday, the Deputy Leader Angela Rayner was said by allies to be frustrated at the tight control exercised by the leader's office over campaign messaging and strategy. Some party aides had sought to blame Rayner, who is Labour's national campaign coordinator, for the poor performance. So this is what you're seeing, is people blame, like, okay, it's your fault. No, it's my fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault. It's his fault. It's her fault. It's everyone else's fault. For me, the problem is there isn't a message. So I'm not blaming Keir Starmer. I'm not blaming Angela Rayner. I'm not blaming the party members. I'm not blaming the national executive. I'm blaming the party as a whole. The party doesn't have a message. They had a message in the past. No, I've forgotten it. It was so punchy. Not for the few, but for the all, or for all, not the few, or so, something like that. But you need something. You need not just a message or a slogan. It needs to be something that people actually believe. It needs to be like the SNP. They are working towards independence. When you think of the SNP, you think of independence. You think of the Tories, you think of Brexit. Some people will say the vaccine. No, but I wouldn't. I don't think people associate the vaccine with the Conservatives. They associate Brexit. Even though Brexit is a disaster, there's many people still think Brexit is a good idea. But even if you're anti-Brexit, you still associate Brexit with the Conservatives. And the Labour Party, what do they represent? Somebody was saying UBI. Maybe they should run on UBI. Unfortunately, I don't think UBI would be a good idea, because UBI is complicated and is difficult to sell. That's probably the biggest problem with UBI. It's not UBI itself. It's difficult to sell UBI. But you could change the name. You could sell it as something else. Super welfare or something. But it has to be some strategy, not just a slogan. The slogan is okay, but there has to be something behind the slogan. People have to be convinced that the slogan means something. For the many, was it for the many, not the few? Such a waste, isn't it? I'm missing the comments. Anyway, let me go on. The party had expected to lose Hartlepool, but the Tories took. The party had expected to lose Hartlepool, but the Tories took the seat for the first time since it was created. By a much larger than expected majority of almost 7,000. Now it's important, and I'm not letting the Labour Party off the hook here, but it's important to remember that in 2019, the Labour Party held Hartlepool, but that was because the right-wing pro-Brexit vote was split between the Brexit Party and the Conservatives. Now, in 2021, the Brexit Party were not, fielding any candidates, or as far as I know, I don't think they did. But their portion of the vote completely collapsed, and it went directly to the Conservative Party. So there was no one splitting the vote. The Conservatives picked up most of the vote there, so the Labour Party, as I said before, if the Labour Party hadn't had the Brexit Party running against the Conservatives in Hartlepool in 2019, they would have probably lost to the Conservatives back in 2019 as well. We wouldn't be talking about Hartlepool today if the Brexit Party hadn't run against the Conservatives in 2019. But this is one of the excuses that's been used, unfortunately, by people on the left within the Labour Party. That represented a dramatic swing of 16% towards the Conservatives. The Shadow Community Secretary Steve Reid. Once again, who the hell is Steve Reid? Called the result shattering. Steve Reid. Does anyone know who Steve Reid is? See, we don't know who these people are. There's no connection with them. The public don't know them. Even political junkies don't really know them. So how are you supposed to see them as a viable alternative to Boris Johnson? I think the Labour Party needs to find someone who's aggressive, extremely aggressive, when it comes to dealing with Boris Johnson. Not cool and calculated. I thought that would may be the way to deal with Boris Johnson, but it's not. Boris Johnson doesn't answer questions. So if you ask Boris Johnson politely, he's not going to answer the questions. So you need to be aggressive. And call him out for what he is. Corrupt. Boris Johnson is corrupt. Boris Johnson doesn't care about the public. Boris Johnson burnt a £50 note in front of a homeless person. How can you vote for someone like that? That's what I would say. Shame people into voting. There are different ways dealing with these types of problems. You can try to convince people not to vote for Boris Johnson, or you can shame people into not voting for Boris Johnson. Do you think burning £50 notes in front of homeless people is a good idea? No, I don't. That's what Boris Johnson did when he was a bit younger. Do you think lying to the public is a good idea? No, I don't. That's what Boris Johnson did. What happens when you call someone a liar in Parliament? Ardab, what happens when you call someone a liar? You actually get punished because it's you're being, what was it? I don't remember the term they used. You can actually call someone a liar, but there is a punishment for it. You are being unhonourable or something like that. Max, people don't care. Working class voters wish they had the luxury of burning £50 notes. They want to get there one day. Ministerian, thank you so much for that super chat. Con is the party of Brexit. SNP is the party of Scottish independence. Labour is the party of internal squabble and too many things. You got removed. Thank you so much for that, Ministerian. Yes, I agree. They have no internal squabbling and too many things, too many policies. And unfortunately, they have many really good policies, but they don't have one unifying message, one unifying theme. I think it should be something like the NHS. Defend the NHS. Reinforce the NHS. Strengthen the NHS. Support the NHS. Something like that. Boris Johnson has £50 note wallpaper. We have to laugh because otherwise we cry. Was worried about Carrie yesterday. Did you see Bojo front marching her to the polls yesterday? Terrifying. Well, he has had. There have been allegations of him being a little bit aggressive with his partners. Hasn't there been allegations of that? I'm not going to say whether he did or not. I heard there were some allegations. Johan, thank you so much for that super chat. What do you think about UBC, where everyone gets £10,000 on their 18th birthday? UBC, Universal Basic C. I'm not sure what that is. Is it like a UBI? I think £10,000 to everyone on their birthday would be. Yeah, I've heard about this before. where the government give you a certain amount of money on your birthday and you can use it for whatever you want, but you can't use it until you're 18. It's like when a child is born, it's put into a trust or something like that. I think this would be a good idea. I'm always in favor of giving people money without strings attached so that they can use that to better themselves. Now, £10,000 isn't going to help you start a business, but it could be enough to help you maybe buy a scooter or a used car so you can use it to deliver goods or buy a small van, for example, and set yourself up as a courier, or to rent an office space for a few months and use that to sell something from that, or use it as an office or something like that. It's not a huge amount of money, but it could be enough to get someone to help them get the ball rolling. Dr. Johan, thank you so much for that super chat. Hope you're well. Stay safe, my friend. Universal Basic Capital. Is that it? What's UBI? Says Pineapple Buy. Okay, let's move on. I want to let you hear James O'Brien, my good friend James O'Brien. He is responding to the results. I used to do videos on James O'Brien, response videos to James O'Brien, but instead I just wanted to show you this response from the election results, how James responded to it. Let's hear what he had to say.
It is, and always has been, the case that the current Prime Minister excites the electorate, excites the population in ways that those of us who think that honesty and integrity matter find baffling, permanently baffling. But I can't condescend on this issue because I fell for it myself in 2008. So that is just one of the unknown unknowns. Was it a massive fail by Labour, or was it a massive win by the Conservatives, or is the truth somewhere in between the two? I love days like this, I've got to tell you. The political anorak in me overcomes the sense of homelessness, and the notion of just getting our teeth into what has gone on thrills me. Except for the fact that in recent years I've begun to wonder whether any of it actually matters. You know that old adage about if voting could change anything, they wouldn't let us do it. I don't know. I heard Peter Mandelson earlier intoning the electoral history of the Labour Party since the 1970s. Which is, lose, 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 Blair, 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 lose, 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 or thereabouts. And it sent something of a shiver down my spine, to be honest with you, because when you see it in those terms, we essentially live in a one-party state. Most people alive now will only have known Labour to win general elections under Tony Blair. It's an incredible thing to reflect upon when you...
And that's... how do we get away from that? Many people will say, well, Tony Blair was the problem. And I agree, Tony Blair had a huge number of faults, there are a huge number of problems with Tony Blair. The Iraq War being one of them. The poodle type behavior to the Americans. And then a huge number of internal political problems, problems affecting people in the UK. But he won elections. There's a reason why he won elections. How can I'm not talking about emulating Tony Blair. I'm talking about emulating his success. How does the Labour Party emulate that success? They need to find someone who ticks a number of boxes. Somebody who's aggressive, in my opinion. Someone who's articulate. Someone who doesn't have a lot of baggage. Someone who's clean in a sense. Someone who can stand up to Boris Johnson. Someone who can find his weaknesses. Confuse him. I don't know who this politician is. Maybe there is someone within the Labour Party. I don't know if they're a current member of Parliament. Could be a councillor. Someone I admire is Andy Burnham, the mayor of Manchester. Is it? Yeah, Manchester. He comes across as somebody who is able to respond to Boris Johnson. I would see him as almost a perfect candidate for... Now, I don't know whether he'd make a good leader, Andy Burnham. I don't know whether he'd make a good leader of the Labour Party, because the Labour Party leader has to wear two hats in a sense. They have to be the leader of the party, but they also have to be the leader of the opposition. And I don't know if Andy would be able to fill the role of the leader of the party, but he definitely would be someone to see in Prime Minister's questions, holding Boris Johnson to account. And I think he's able to present himself as a man of the people much more than Jeremy Corbyn could ever do, much more than Keir Starmer could ever do, and definitely much more than Boris Johnson could ever do. Lammy is good as well. But I think Lammy, I'm not that familiar with David Lammy, but I think he does have some baggage, as far as I know. There were accusations of expenses, him running up huge amounts of expense. I don't know if that's true or not. Anyway, let's hear a little bit more from James.
You note that under Margaret Thatcher, John Major, David Cameron, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, the list of Conservative leaders that have won general elections is considerably longer. And yet I do still think there's something very, very unique. You can't have gradations of uniqueness. But Johnson is a one-off. And whether it sustains, whether it lasts, I do not know. It also makes me wonder whether we are increasingly like when I did my A-level in politics, the distinction between America and the United Kingdom was supposed to be that the two parties were actually politically very different. Certainly post-79, when what I think the academics called consensus politics came to an end with Margaret Thatcher's arrival in Downing Street. In America, apart from social issues like abortion and the death penalty, when I did my A-level in 1990, the received wisdom was that the two main parties were actually quite similar, and that elections became beauty contests, personality-led contests between the two leaders of the two main parties. I think that's very, very different now. I wonder, in fact, could this be the first clever observation of the day? I wonder, in fact, whether the roles have reversed. Whether actually America now sees, particularly with Biden's agenda, which seems to be much more progressive than even his campaign suggested it would be. I wonder, and the continuing abandonment of objective truth that the Republican Party has undertaken. I wonder whether the political gulf between the Democrats and the Republicans in America is now huge, whereas here you're probably going to win a general election as a popularity contest.
Yes, you will. You will win a general election as a popularity contest. If you look at Boris Johnson won, and there were people who voted for the Labour Party then turned around and voted for Boris Johnson because they liked his style. They believed he was a man of the people. He says it how he feels it. He says it how he feels. He doesn't, he's rough around the edges. He's not prepared. And I think that was something that convinced a lot of people in the United States to vote for Donald Trump. He says it how he feels it. He's rough around the edges. He's not afraid to swear. He's not afraid to treat women with nothing but contempt. For some people, which is a wonder, for some people is an asset. But now it's changing. And I think James O'Brien is right here, how it's moved from a beauty contest to, no, we need somebody who's competent. And perhaps the UK is still in the phase of the beauty contest. So they need to find somebody who's, in a sense, more beautiful than Boris Johnson. Somebody who's able to out Boris Johnson. Now, I'm not a big fan of this type of approach because I generally think people will... some people, the vast majority of people will see through it. You can't invent, you can't fake it, you can't pretend it. Brexit means Brexit, will that too? Convert John Bercow. It has to be somebody that rises through the ranks naturally. It can't be somebody parachuted in. That's the problem. Is I would love to have John Bercow as leading the Labour Party, but it wouldn't work because John Bercow is passionate about things, but he's not a Labour person. I would prefer somebody like Andy, Mayor Andy. He would be able to. He's Labour through and through. I agree, Max. It's never about competence, no matter how many pretend it is. Yes, it's not about ability. It's about image. It's been like that for I don't know how long now. I compare Tony Blair to John Major, who is more charismatic. Warsaw College is more beautiful than Boris Johnson. When I mean by beautiful, I mean as in charismatic in a sense. 194 likes to 525 viewers. Smash that like button, guys. Lord Bucket, admittedly, but no, I think we're still looking in the wrong direction. We need to find somebody who is a little bit rough around the edges. John Prescott, if he would come back, if he was still able to do that. That's the type of person. Somebody who's authentic. Somebody who's able to call out Boris Johnson's bullshit and say, look, Boris Johnson is not authentic. I am authentic. I think that's one of the things that, unfortunately, Keir Starmer has. People don't believe that he's authentic. And you can't fake that. You can't invent it. You can't pretend that you have it. Boris Johnson has been doing it all his life. He's not authentic, but the people believe he is.
It's why 2017 was such a weird election, because it was a popularity contest between two leaders who were quite unpopular with the general population. And yet Johnson enjoys, or has enjoyed, great personal approval ratings throughout his career. I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking out loud in a slightly clumsy fashion so that you will feel welcome to do the same. Okay.
Jack, thank you so much for that super chat. Beer money, thank you very much. Very, very much appreciated. I would definitely invest it in beer. Bozo is a complete fake. He is. But he's able to convince the public that he's not. People believed Labour needs Rapsy Nesbitt. Authenticity, Nandi is the pick. I agree. I think she would be a good choice. I think there are a number of different people. So I don't know that much about Lisa Nandy. One of the problems I have with Lisa Nandy is that she was or is a Brexiteer. She voted for Brexit. And she represented a Brexit-leaning or Brexit constituency. I wouldn't hold that against her. I just have a problem with that because I think moving forward, the future of the UK is back in the EU. And I don't think she would be the right candidate to push that. Nandi doesn't have the energy. Alan Johnson, if he's still around. Lisa Nandy is a ridiculous Lexiteer. Nandy would destroy Labour. Lisa Nandy wouldn't win. She's more like Kamala Harris. That's the problem. There, see, we can't focus on. We can't rally around one candidate. You'd as well get Mayor Quimby for all the good the chocolate teapot party is doing with politics right now. Borat, yes. Starmer does have his wire. Does have wire in his blood. Not sure. I don't understand that expression. Nandi as leader? Thanks, but no thanks. Didn't Nandi liken Scots Indie to the Catalan thing in terms of how to police them? Actually, yes, I think she said something like that. She did backpedal a bit, but she should be, when it comes to Scottish independence, I always believe that the Labour Party should say, look, if the Scots want to have a referendum, they should be free to have that, but we will campaign for the union. I don't think there's a problem with that. We believe the union is strong. The union can withstand a referendum. Denying a referendum means that you're weak, that you're afraid you're going to lose. Anyway, we'll get to that later. My wife. Anyway, let's move on. So it says here, of course, Labour crashes to humiliating by-election defeat in Hartlepool. Keir Starmer faces uncomfortable questions as party loses seat to Tories for the first time in 62 years. Labour is... this is just a repeat of what we've seen before. There was a... Let me see. Most of this, unfortunately, is dominated by Hartlepool and the election results as they're still coming in. But I wanted to show you one person's response to this. So this is, of course, Jeremy Corbyn. Johan, thank you so much for that super chat. You really think all the EU countries would let the UK back in, or Norway let the UK into EEC? I think the UK will eventually rejoin, but it's sometime down the road. I think a number of different things have to be put into place before the UK can rejoin the European Union. I do think it will happen, but I think it's going to happen in a number of stages. There's going to be alignment. There are going to be things reinforced. It's going to be put in. It'll have to happen in a way that some party down the road can't just say let's leave the European Union again. I don't think it's going to happen in a way like that. So it's probably going to be in a way where the UK has had proportional representation. You're going to have a coalition of different parties. Some parties will want to leave the European Union. Some parties will not want to rejoin the European Union. You're going to always have those people, but their ability to influence politics would be greatly reduced under proportional representation. In the same way as you have these parties around Europe, but the vast majority of them have no power. They're not in a position to force their country out of the European Union. So I understand that many, at the moment, looking at it at this moment in time, we said, no, there's no way the European Union would allow the UK back in. But we're looking at it from the perspective of today, where we have Boris Johnson in charge, we have Brexiteers in charge. That's not always going to be the case. And as the UK struggles with Brexit and the problems of the pandemic and public debt and everything like that, there will be a push, I think, to align at least, and then eventually get closer and closer to some form of EU membership. It'll never be like it was before. That's not going to return. But it'll be as close as possible to that, I believe. But we're still talking about years, if not decades. Thanks for that super chat. So let's hear what Jeremy Corbyn had to say about all of this.
2017 and 19 manifestos which proved themselves to be very popular. We were condemned for the amount of money we wanted to spend on investment, all of which has now happened because of the COVID crisis. I would have concentrated on the levels of inequality and injustice in our society. I wouldn't have given the Tories any space or any support for their shambolic and incompetent handling of so much to do with COVID.
How, Jeremy? In Parliament, is that what you're talking about? Organising protests? Well, you were still able to do that. Now, in Parliament, no, because you were not the leader. But Boris Johnson has not been Prime Minister forever. He hasn't been Prime Minister since yesterday, I should say. So there were many opportunities to organise against the Prime Minister. It's not just in Parliament you have to do this. You have a huge support base. You could have organised protests against the Tories.
And offer people a vision of social justice, offer people a vision of safe, secure, permanent jobs, not the sort of fly-by-night insecure economy, which is the main message that Boris Johnson's Tories are offering. We could give out
But people
a very
here have
clear
voted Conservative.
that would be different.
You know, they voted for Boris Johnson. Isn't it possible they like what they're getting, you know, and they're not interested in a left-wing Labour prospectus?
A lot of people didn't vote as well, actually. I think we have to...
Okay. But we don't count the votes that were not voted. We count the votes that were voted, if you know what I mean. We don't forget about, we don't say, well, look at who didn't vote. Yes, that's important. But the people who came out and voted, they're the ones who decided which party would be in power. You need to convince your own people to come out and vote. Max Corbyn has been fighting the Tory party longer than you have been alive. Think about that power. I know he has. He's been a member of Parliament since 1983. But and I agree with him on many things, and I think he's a great attack dog. But the problem is that he was made leader, and he was not a good leader. He was not the correct person to be leader. The policies were good, but there was no true leadership. There was no unifying message, theme that the Labour Party had. I understand they had a slogan, but that was not cutting through it. And of course, I think his biggest mistake, of course, was his position on Brexit and a second referendum.
To make, as a Labour Party, a very clear pitch on what social justice would look like, what real opportunity would look like, because people have had far too long of this kind of economic strategy which leaves so many people poor. And indeed,
why didn't you look? I don't like going back because he's not the leader now, so it's a bit pointless asking him these questions. But why was he against a coalition with the Liberal Democrats, the SNP and the Greens? That could have stopped Boris Johnson. Why is the Labour Party so dead set against changing its constitution to allow it to step aside and allow other parties to field candidates in positions where they could defeat the Tories? Darren, thank you so much for that super chat. How about George Galloway? I could see him as a great rallying leader. I hope that's a joke. Please tell me that's a joke.
since the COVID crisis begun, the levels of inequality in Britain have got worse. The millionaires that have come as a result of government spending on COVID, all of these things need to be challenged. You don't succeed in challenging the government if you spend your time agreeing with what their strategy is. I don't agree with their strategy. Right. I don't support their strategy. What I want to see is a different world.
But the other side of the Labour Party think that you are the problem, that this loss was your legacy, that you'd done so much damage up here and moved Labour so far away from aspiration and what people wanted in places like Hartlepool, that it's really you that's the problem, and that the longer you keep talking about that kind of vision, the more Keir Starmer needs to take you on and drum you out.
During my time as leader of the party, we trebled our membership to 600,000. We developed a democratic form of policy making. We didn't impose things on people. We developed that democracy within the party. And whilst we didn't obviously win in 2019, I know that better than anybody else, the vote we got, the national popular vote we got, was the highest of any election since 2001.
But you didn't win. It doesn't matter if you increase the number of members of in the party. It doesn't matter if you won the argument. It doesn't matter if you increase the vote. You didn't win. And part of that problem is because the Labour Party refused in the past to sign up to a proportional representation model. If they had agreed to that in the past, I'm not blaming Jeremy Corbyn for this. This is a Labour problem. The Labour Party wanted to stick with first past the post because they benefited from it to a certain extent. And because of that, they have suffered since the Labour Party went out of power. The Labour vote the Labour Party's share of the vote is continually decreasing. I had an image. Where is it now? Do I have it on the computer? I just wanted to share it with you because I found it earlier on. No, it was on Twitter. But I had an image earlier on where it showed in Hartlepool how since 2008 the Labour support for Labour had been decreasing. And it was people like Jeremy Corbyn who just sped it along. He did not stop the rot.
Accepting the very big vote we got in 2017. So to say our policies were unpopular is simply not true. And I think the party has to recognise what its roots are, what its principles are, and meet people's needs.
Okay, but you knew what your principles were back in 2017 and 2019. The reason you won in 2017 could be blamed on Theresa May for messing up. The reason you failed in 2019 was because you were extremely unpopular. The policies were popular, but you couldn't sell them. It's like a salesman who has the best vacuum cleaner in the world. I'm not going to say Dyson. A vacuum cleaner in the world. But if they're not able to sell it, it doesn't make any difference whether it's the best or it's the worst. A good salesman or woman is able to sell the worst vacuum cleaner to the public because they're good at selling. The Labour Party leader was not good at selling his policies. How many times had I been shouting at the screen for him to go on TV and do interviews? Max, move on. Okay, I will. It's not about policies. It's about personality. As we saw before with James O'Brien, it's about personality. He didn't have the personality. He couldn't stand up to Boris Johnson. He had too much baggage. Oh, guys, okay, we're halfway through the stream, so I want to take a little break. For those of you who are just new to the stream, normally about halfway through we have a little comedy moment just to lighten the mood. So I wanted to show you this funny video regarding the Democratic Unionist Party, but not what you might expect. But we'll get back to the election in a moment.
Hello, people of Northern Ireland, the north of Ireland. I'm officially putting my name in Arlene Foster's ring as leader of the DUP. I am a staunch unionist and have been celebrating the 12th ever since I learned that it is cool to celebrate the subjugation of a section of society based on religious principles. As we have come to the centenary of our wee country, I would like to announce my intention to contest the leadership left by the vacant Arlene. I would like to personally acknowledge Arlene's dedication and thank her for her exceptional work in running away due to threats from dissidents. I would also like to share my appreciation for my fellow running-mates Jeffrey Donaldson and Edwin Poots. Let me assure them that I too believe that dinosaurs coexisted with man, and that gay men will never have access to the same legal rights that other gay men have in the country we want so much to belong to. I assured the good Protestant people of a part of Ulster that I am dedicated and qualified enough for this position ever since I shouted at a picture of the Pope in 1983. I have been practicing of late, and allow me to demonstrate my suitability for the role. No, no, never, never, Sinn Féin, IRE, United Kingdom, the Queen, terrorists, terrorism, and so forth and so on. Let me make this clear. I have no doubt, and be in no doubt, that I am a firm anti-transistantiationist. I believe in the Bible and the supremacy of our wee country, and there will never, I repeat, never be a United Ireland over my Percy Stewart's and my wife Petunia's dead bodies. And now we will show our respects for our wee country and its place in the United Kingdom, and of respect to Her Majesty the Queen. Shit, wrong song! Up the rap! Hello, people of
Very good, very good, very good. Okay, let's move on. But before we get to Scotland, I just want to talk about some other parties during the election. Used condoms. Drink, girls, drink. So we have the Lib Dems and the Greens making gains in English local elections. So while it's been bad for the Labour Party, it hasn't been so bad for... Ian basically reincarnated. It hasn't been so bad for the Lib Dems and the Greens, it seems. So signs of the Liberal Democrats' resurgence emerging in England's local elections, including in at least one Brexit stronghold, which I think was Kent, while the Green Party also took seats in both Labour and from both Labour and the Conservatives. In Stockport, the Liberal Democrats became the largest party with a one-seat advantage over Labour. They would probably now form a minority administration, particularly potentially relying on support from the Tories, Independents, and the first ever Green Party councillor in the borough. In Cambridgeshire, the Conservatives lost control of the council after Lib Dems gained 5 seats, taking them to 20 to the Tories 28. The county hall is now in no overall control. So it seems that while the Conservatives were doing well in some ways, the other parties like the Lib Dems and the Greens were picking up seats as well, at the expense of the Labour Party. So the Labour Party's support didn't just collapse when it came to the Conservatives, but it also took a bit of a beating when it came to other parties like the Greens and the Lib Dems. And that's why it's necessary, I believe, that the Labour Party, the Lib Dems, the Greens, and perhaps the SNP need to form some coalition going forward to stand up to the Conservative Party and to push for proportional representation. Okay, I want to move on. So what's happening north of the border in Scotland? Well, Nicola Sturgeon plays down SNP prospects after pro-UK tactical voting. So what's happened is that it seems that the Labour Party, the Conservatives and the Lib Dems in Scotland believed it would be better to work together. Yes, the Labour Party and the Conservatives working together against the SNP. So Nicola Sturgeon has played down the prospects of winning an overall Holyrood majority despite a late surge in wins for the Scottish National Party, or as Boris Johnson likes to call them, the Nationalist Party. The First Minister and the SNP leader, party leader, told reporters in Glasgow, a majority has always been a very long shot, as counts across the country showed support for sitting Labour, Conservative and Lib Dem candidates. But the first day of results left the SNP with a significant and an unassailable lead over their closest rivals, the Conservatives, and Labour taking 38 of the 40. Labour and the Conservatives taking 38 of the 47 constituency seats, which declared on Friday. Speaking earlier, Sturgeon said, "I'm feeling extremely happy and extremely confident that we can keep. So we're on track for in the SNP for a fourth significant election victory, and have the ability to form a government again, and that's an extraordinary achievement for any political party. With Scottish election counting taking place over 2 days, so we're not going to have the full results until tomorrow. Friday's results found that the SNP on 47% of the overall vote, with the Tories and Labour on 22% and 21% respectively. These vote shares were close to their showings of 2016 when the SNP won 63 of the Holyrood's 129 seats. So it seems that the support for the SNP has gone up, but where the Labour Party and the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives used to be fighting over second place, they have instead decided to officially or unofficially form a pact in order to fight the SNP. So the SNP, you will see some of the results where the SNP seem to be not losing out to the Conservatives, for example. The Conservatives are gaining on the SNP, but not because the share of the vote, not because the SNP supporters didn't come out and vote. It's because there has been an agreement, a pro-union agreement between those remaining parties. I want to show you this video.
A majority has always been a very, very long shot. The Holyrood system is a proportional representation system. In 2011 we effectively broke that system, so it would be good to do, but I have never taken that for granted. That has always been on a knife edge, a small number of votes and a small number of seats. So we'll wait and see how the votes pan out over today and tomorrow, but at this stage in the results, and there's a long, long way to go, I'm feeling extremely happy and extremely confident that we are on track in the SNP for a fourth consecutive election victory and to have the ability to form a government again. And that's an extraordinary achievement for any political party. And if that is how the results end and that is how the election turns out, then I'll be ready and eager to get back to work on behalf of the people of Scotland.
Let me read some of your comments, guys, before we go on. RC, I speak to trees, but yet I get a reply. I'm not sure what that means. SNP won't win the overall majority. Unionists. Whoops, I missed that. It was from James. SNP won't win an overall majority. Unionists are voting tactically, and we are arguing amongst ourselves online and upping each other. It's embarrassing. Alba will return no seats. Yeah, Alba are not doing as well as some people had believed. I always thought it was strange that, I didn't want to criticize Alba at the beginning. Alba, I called them Alba because that's the way it's written in English. I'm sorry. But it's, I thought the fact that they came in so soon, so late in the game, I didn't think that it would actually help their chances. Now, that's not to say that it was impossible, because if we look at, for example, the Brexit Party, although it was formed from UKIP, but the Brexit Party did pretty well for itself at the last local elections, and it was a new party, so it wasn't impossible for Alba to do well, but it doesn't seem to be the case. I think perhaps Alex Salmond is a bit of a strain, a pull on the party. He's not helping. He's a huge figure in Scottish politics, but I don't think he has helped the party all that much. And I think when it came to the fact that the Labour Party, the Labour Party, the Tories and the Lib Dems were forming a pact against the SNP, I think many people in Scotland said, look, let's just throw our support behind the SNP instead. Or the Greens. The Greens seem to be doing quite well. The Guardian article is usually biased against Sturgeon. Disappointing in the Guardian for this. Labour showing their true colours in Scotland. Tories in disguise. Labour is pro-union. I understand if the Labour Party is pro-union, but why do they have a problem with the referendum? If they do they believe the union is strong? Maybe they don't. But then you have to allow it to run its course. Present results as close as of counting today. 48 seats declared. SNP 39, Lib Dems 4, Tories 3, Labour 2. Wow. I assume that's in predominantly SNP leaning constituencies. Labour Party doing Johnson's dirty work in Scotland. FSM is the dog is off. Have a good night, FSM. Labour getting its voters out for the Tories seems to be the problem for a while now. They seem to be getting they should be kicked out of the party, seeing it as it's against party policy. Yeah, convincing people. So when it comes to convincing people to vote against the Tories, the Labour Party are not very good at doing it. But when it comes to voting against the SNP, they have no problem with convincing people to do it. The problem is Labour wants to fix the UK for Scotland and convince them to stay. That ship has sailed. You know, I think those days are gone. The people of Scotland have gotten a taste for independence. That could have been the case if Brexit hadn't come along. But Brexit has done so much damage, has burnt so many bridges, that I think the Labour Party should just come to terms with, it's gone. We can't bring it back. We can't operate with a situation where the Scots, we can't convince the Scots not to be supportive of independence anymore. Like how can you convince people who have been lied to, who voted against something and got it anyway? How do you convince the Scots that their votes mean anything in the House of Commons when Boris Johnson doesn't respect the SNP when they ask questions, when they have no real power? Even if Boris Johnson answered questions, the SNP have no power, no true representation in Scotland has no true representation, I should say, in the House of Commons. It's not that and I understand for numerical reasons this is the case. You couldn't have it split 3 ways, or 4 ways, I should say. You couldn't split like in the United States, where every state gets 2 senators. You couldn't have it like that in the UK, where each country gets a set number of members of parliament, because the English would say this is not fair. We represent much more of the population. Demographics rule against the Scots, and it's very difficult to explain or convince them that it's better to stay in the Union. It's better to stay in a union where you have no power. It's better to stay in a union where the Prime Minister treats you with contempt. This is not just my opinion. Boris Johnson will not visit Scotland. He went there last year and under the cover of darkness and was smuggled out the next day. He had to avoid members of the public. How is that a Prime Minister representing the people of the UK? Boris Johnson claims to represent the people of the UK. He doesn't represent the people of Scotland. Once again, this is not just my opinion. If he truly represented the people of Scotland, he would have no problem visiting Scotland, meeting people on the street, shaking their hands, not now, with COVID, elbow bumping them. But he doesn't do that. I don't know when the last Prime Minister actually did that. You can't get away from that. How do you even if the Labour Party could win power tomorrow, how do they convince the people of Scotland that they're better off in the Union? It's not just about money. Even if they say, we'll give Scotland more money, we'll give them more control over their more control over their parliament, over their laws or whatever. That's not enough, because they'll always be playing second fiddle. And you can't fix that by levelling the playing field, because the people of England would be rightfully upset about that. I don't see any other way out of this. It's trying to keep Scotland in the Union when the logical, and I'm not just talking about politically or sentimental reasons or economic reasons, it's simply, it's no longer functioning. In a similar way to what's happening in Northern Ireland. Northern Ireland will eventually become part of a united Ireland, because it's no longer viable as remaining part of the UK. Scottish Unionists showing Northern Ireland Unionists how to play politics intelligently. Still see the SNP with enough of a mandate to press for a referendum if they're up to it. If Scotland leaves the Union, will Ranger fan burn a bus? Probably. Although maybe they'll only do it on a football day, only on match day. They're probably too lazy to do it any other day. Exactly, Max. The Labour Party needs to learn that it's too late to turn it around. They need to start to represent Scotland and the Scottish people. So it's different. I'm not comparing. I'm not saying that this is inevitable for Wales, because Wales is a different kettle of fish. It's a different situation in Wales. But in Scotland, it's too late. Because the Scottish people have realised, they've come to the conclusion that they're, and I don't like to use this expression because I don't think it's not the right expression to use, but second-class citizens. I don't like to use that expression, but they're not represented in the UK Parliament. And as I've said, it's because their numbers, they don't have the population that the rest of the other parts of the UK have. It would make more sense if there was English devolution and there was a cooperation between an independent, like Scotland as a country and England as a country, and they formed an informal United Kingdom. That would be much better than the status quo, because then the Scottish people would say, well, we're independent, but we're still part of something bigger, like the European Union. My country comes first. Glasgow Kiss, she's a bloody fifer too. Buchanhaven High School, unbelievable. I don't know who you're talking about there. Do you think maybe Scotland leaving the UK would help Labour? Since Labour basically don't have much hope for seats there. Do you think Scotland leaving the UK would help? No, it would actually be damaging to Labour, because Labour rely on the SNP, because if Labour wanted to get into power, they may need the SNP. So if Scotland leaves, Labour would be in deep doo-doo. But the only way out of that doo-doo would be for the Labour Party to push through proportional representation first. It would be damaging to the Labour Party as well to the Conservatives, but you'd be bringing down the Conservatives. The Conservatives would disappear pretty much overnight with proportional representation. Ruth the Mooth Max, her seat taken by SNP. Ruth, yes, I read that. Yes, she lost her seat. She had moved to the House of Lords, and her seat was available, but the SNP won it. That was a bit of a kick in the teeth for her, I imagine. Although she's still on her £300 a day expenses, so she should be okay. Shouldn't be too worried about it. I don't think she's going to miss too many. She's going to have too many sleepless nights. Didn't the Tories always punish Scotland from Westminster for decades? Yes, I think that's always been the case. But when devolution came along, and I'm once again speaking from a point of ignorance here, much better people to speak about this than myself. But when devolution came along, it was sold as an idea to keep a lid on independence. So if we can give the Scots their own parliament, we can keep them in line in a way, and we can make sure that the two main parties in Scotland, the Labour Party and the Conservative Party, never let independence fester. That would be their point of view. But in a way, people got the taste of independence through devolution, and they liked it. I'm a huge supporter of devolution and independence, and it's not just in Scotland. I think people who feel that they have something, that they want to be, they need to, how can I say, demonstrate self-determination, should be allowed to do that. Whether it's in Spain, whether it's here in Italy. For example, here in Italy we have a region not far from where I live, which is Sud Tirol. These people believe they're Austrian, they're German. They have their own language, their own culture. And I'm not Italian, but I wouldn't have a problem with them separating from Italy. And I don't think most people in Italy would have a problem with that. They should be allowed to go. For them, it's not going to be the case here in Italy because they like being part of Italy for tax reasons, and also the Austrians don't really care about them. They don't want them either because they're a bit of an economic problem. Proportional representation would hurt Labour more than it would the Tories at the moment. Tories non-transferable would be stronger than anti-Tory transferable can be for any one anti-Tory party. I'd like to look into that more, because I do believe that the current approach is helping the Tories too much, and something has to change. Max, Scotland will not be free from London control until it stops accepting British rules and restrictions to its unalienable freedom to choose to take back control. And that will have to happen through a referendum. They are not. This territory is given to Italy after World War One. They are this territory given to Italy after World War One. It is part of Italy, yes. It's just that these people want to be free of Italy. That's not true, Max. We have 16 states here, very much devolved, even more so than Scotland. And no one cares about independence from the Republic. The problem is not devolution, but Westminster. Yeah, I think, it's not so much we want to be free, we want to be free from Westminster. And I think that's always the problem. And I think Westminster just reinforces the requirement for independence, reinforces the message. Boris Johnson is the greatest advocate for Scottish independence. Now, some people within the independence movement would probably disagree with me, but I think if Boris Johnson was not there and somebody a bit more palatable, it would be more difficult to push for independence. I think support for independence would be slightly lower if there was a different Prime Minister in charge. So once again, it's Westminster. If you look, and I've covered this before on the channel, if you look at the voting record of most Tories, they voted against more powers for Scotland and for Wales, for those parliaments. They will sing, yes, we support devolution. We're not against devolution. But if you actually look at their voting record, they have consistently voted against more powers for Scotland and Wales. So they are against, they're definitely against devolution, and they're certainly against independence. They don't care about democracy. They don't care about more powers for ordinary people or local people. It's about concentrating power in Westminster. And unfortunately for them, the more they try to concentrate power, the more they drive people away. Anyway, let's move on. I wanted to show you another, of course, one of the big problems, of course, with when it comes to driving people away from Westminster is Brexit. So we have this news on Brexit. It says more Northern Ireland trade disruption looms as EU rejects EU rejects UK compromise plan. It says here the EU has rejected. Let me make sure you guys can see it. It's a little bit small, but you should be able to see it. The EU has rejected a push by Boris Johnson to relax rules on food safety as a way of easing Brexit disruption at Northern Ireland's ports. UK negotiators have been pushing for the bloc to take a more flexible approach on food import and animal health regulations that would reduce the need for disruptive new controls. But the European Commission signalled on Friday that it could not adopt the compromise plan. The UK had wanted the EU to take a risk assessment-based approach to animal safety that would have taken into account the UK currently has very similar rules to the EU. But the Commission believes that this would undermine EU food safety rules and the bloc's zero-risk approach. Basically what Boris Johnson's government was saying was, please trust us. But trust is something that you build up. And you don't reinforce trust by saying, yes, we're willing to break international law in a very specific and limited way. Instead, the EU says that the UK would have to formally align with the EU food rules, if they want to reduce border checks and controls. And this is once again coming back to the point that the EU is in control here. The UK is asking the EU to change its rules. The EU said, well, we want to reduce restrictions. Well, we can reduce restrictions if you align with our rules. Once again, sovereignty means nothing if you have no power. Brexiteers wanted their sovereignty. They got their sovereignty, but they have given away all the power. Now they have to align with EU rules if they want to. It's cakeism again. Yes, Ronnie. The UK government has ruled this out and says it must have freedom to diverge from EU rules. Yeah, but if this is the insanity of the Brexiteers, we want to sell our goods into the EU. The EU say, well, we need to check them. The UK is, but believe us. They say, well, we can't believe you unless you align with our standards. We're not going to align with your standards because we want our sovereignty. So, of course, since the 1st of January, Northern Ireland has effectively had a customs and regulatory border with the rest of the UK, which has caused significant disruption to trade and shortages of some goods. But the situation is set to worsen later this year when the grace periods exempting supermarket suppliers expire. The EU and the UK have been locked in new Brexit talks. New Brexit talks? What? I thought Brexit was done. Since February in a bid to come to a compromise before the grace periods expire. The UK has unilaterally extended the deadline for even more stricter controls, a move that the EU says is unlawful. But meanwhile, both sides are far from an agreement, with significant differences remain and no landing zone in sight. Officials in Brussels told The Independent that negotiators from both sides are constantly in touch about the issues. Ireland's public broadcaster RTE News reported that Lord Frost, the UK's chief negotiator, and the EU Vice President Maros Šefčovič are expected to meet business leaders in Northern Ireland as early as next week to discuss the issue. But once again, this is not going anywhere until you align. And if you want to align, that's going to resolve a lot of these problems. What's the last trick? Reclassify waters to be able to sell. The EU citizens die on germs in the stomach. Yeah, but that was just run by the Express. I think it never actually was a real story. This is what sometimes Brexiteers will do, the Brexit supporting media. They'll run a story saying, look, we have succeeded. And then it would turn out to be, it wasn't actually, there's no evidence to support that. As Ian Paisley Sr. said, our people may be British, but our cows are Irish. Yes. We don't care about the goods. We care about sovereignty. We care about the people. Even Ian Paisley Sr. saw the pragmatism there. Freedom is not given, it's taken. There is no UK constitution. There's no written constitution. The idea that they can get away from EU rules is a joke, and for the Boris, the only way to do that is to stop trading with the EU. Yes, you can stop following EU rules by not exporting to the EU. They don't seem to understand this. Well, no, they understand it, but they pretend not to understand. This is something that's common with Brexiteers. They will pretend to be ignorant. Or they may actually be ignorant. But I think it's worse to pretend, because you know you're talking crap. But you know that the people who are listening to you believe what you say. Look at Brexit. Look at Boris Johnson, for example. Boris Johnson said on numerous occasions that because of Brexit, you've heard this before, because of Brexit, the UK was able to avoid the European Super League. Or we're not going to have teams in the Super League. Or Brexit helped stop the Super League in some way, the European Super League. Now, people, I don't even remember the framing of it completely. I am not exactly sure of the detail. Boris is not a details guy, but that was enough. That was enough for many people. Many people in Hartlepool, it seems, as well. They believed, well, European, bad. European Union, very bad. European Super League, well, we've heard that it's bad. So what's the common denominator there? What's what's common between European Super League and European Union? European. So anytime we hear the word European, it's bad. And Boris Johnson has told us that Brexit has saved us from the European Super League. Like, it's comical. But people believe it. How could I still struggle? I would love for someone, a Brexiteer, I have reached out to Brexiteers to come onto the channel, to come on to Discord, and we can have a conversation. I'm not talking about having a debate, but just a conversation. I'd like to ask them about these things. When Boris Johnson says that Brexit has protected the UK from the European Super League, what does he mean? First of all, do you believe him? Then if you say, no, I don't believe him, okay, then tell me what part of what Boris Johnson says about Brexit do you believe? And why do you believe it? Why do you believe in what Boris Johnson says about Brexit? Why do you not believe him when he says things about the European Super League, but you do believe him when he says things about vaccine rollout? And how do you identify when he's telling the truth and when he's not telling the truth? And if he's told a lie on more than one occasion, why do you continue to believe him? Let's take Boris Johnson out of the equation for a moment. Imagine you have a friend of yours who's always telling lies. You get to the stage where you stop believing them, even when you think they may be telling the truth. They'll tell you, yeah, I'll be there at 9 o'clock. But you prepare for them not to be there at 9 o'clock because you know that they're probably lying. But they could be telling the truth. And Boris Johnson is the same. But for some strange reason, when it comes to Brexit, they don't care whether he's telling the truth or not. Boris was pro-ESL, pro-business. It's all talk. Once again, I don't know whether Boris Johnson was pro-business or pro-European Union. Or pro-European Super League, sorry. I don't know what Boris Johnson actually stands for. Does he care about the NHS? I don't know. His actions, I actually look at his actions. His actions demonstrate that he doesn't care about the NHS. Does he care about poor people? His actions demonstrate that he doesn't. When it came to providing free school meals for children, he didn't support them. When it came to not burning £50 notes in front of homeless people, he did not do that. At what stage why do we divorce people's actions from their rhetoric? Let's get out of Max's system, though. Reagan elite. No, I don't understand. Johnson is pro-Johnson. That's probably about all. And then the fascination people have with him. People not just trust him, but they think he's an ordinary person. They think he's a man of the people. He went to Eton. What is it? It costs about £40,000 a year to go to Eton. I would like to ask these people who may be on universal credit, what do you think about how do you relate to somebody who sent their child to an exclusive school that costs £40,000 a year and received a letter? A letter was sent to his parents saying that he felt entitled in Eton. At what stage does it break down and people realize that this guy is a charlatan? This guy is not to be trusted. Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The Boris and Boris Johnson vaccine. Boris Johnson is a shapeshifter. But is it just us that see through it? Do the people not see through it either? How is it? He's not that good at it. He's not that good at lying. It's like a good liar is someone who's able to convince you. But he says such ridiculous things, and then he goes back. For example, the border in the Irish Sea. You could ask him today, is there a border in the Irish Sea? He could be standing at the border in the Irish Sea, and he would say there's no border in the Irish Sea. Does he have some sort of mental condition where maybe he doesn't know himself? Maybe Boris Johnson, in his mind, is actually telling the truth. Maybe he has convinced himself by all of this lying that he's actually telling the truth. So I didn't mean to get onto a rant about Boris Johnson, but it fascinates me. It fascinates me that people continue to believe him, even though it's absolutely clear that he's a liar. Just imagine, would you apply that logic to somebody that you know? We all know somebody who's flexible with the truth. You would go out of your way from doing things that you believe that like if they said, I'm going to be there at 9 o'clock, you would prepare for them not to be there at 9 o'clock because you wouldn't trust them. And that's something you can do. But if the person who's telling you, I care about you, I'm going to decide whether you receive universal credit or not, or you get an uplift or not, or I'm going to look after your children to make sure that they have food on the table, that's a different situation. In that scenario, you can't just go, well, it's Boris, you know. Azioa, thank you so much for that super chat. It will be taken up to a generation. It'll take up to a generation before public opinion is depoisoned. Nationalism lasts once it takes hold, no matter any factual proof. Yeah, I think it's nationalism and tribalism. The nationalism is with the flag. Thanks for that super chat as well. I think it's nationalism with the flag. The Tories have been able to convince people that, you know, I've taken the piss out of this with, you know, my character from the 1st of April. If you haven't seen it, do check out the video. And there's should be one coming again soon. Might make a bit of a character out of that. But, you know, this flag shagging, you know, the flag demonstrates how much I care about the country. The bigger the flag, the better. And it's extremely dangerous. But it's not just that, it's also the tribalism, the idea that it's us against them. It's the in-group versus the out-group. And it's extremely concerning because it seems to be racketing up all the time. And I had hoped that the Conservative Party would get a bit of a beating in these elections, but they haven't. And I'm afraid that this nationalism and tribalism is just going to get worse and worse until it stops. Nico, thank you so much for that super chat. Should not care about Mr. Johnson. Tories are the problem and PR is the cure. I agree. PR is not a silver bullet, but it's a way out of the dark. We're in the dark at the moment. There is a way out, and PR is the light, is the candle way out to lead us out of the dark. You should call your character Alexander de Filet, flag shagger. I think he's undiagnosed personality disorder, cluster B. Well, we're at towards the end of the live stream, guys. So I just want to I think there was another thing I wanted to do, but we'll leave. So just about I just wanted to touch on one story before we go, and then we'll then you will have our one for the road. Just when it comes to criticism of the Labour Party criticism comes from all angles, and it says here Labour MP Khalid Mahmood, quits Keir Starmer's frontbench, warning party taken over by woke social media warriors. So Labour MP Khalid Mahmood has quit Keir Starmer's front bench, warning that the party has been taken over by London-based bourgeoisie with the support of brigades of woke social media warriors. Mr. Mahmood has served as a shadow defence minister since Starmer's arrival in office, but said he resigned because Labour has lost touch with ordinary British people. The Birmingham Parry Bar MP announced his decision in the wake of the party's crushing defeat in the former safe seat of Hartlepool, and made it clear that he expected Labour also to lose the election for West Midlands mayor. Labour sources said that he had left the front bench some weeks ago, but no announcement was made at the time. That's strange. I'm not sure. I'm more likely to believe him than to believe the Labour Party, because they would have announced it. Although they could have avoided announcing it because it would have been embarrassing. So it's not sure who to believe here. He's saying that he left because of woke people, and the Labour Party are saying, well, he left for whatever reason. Now, is this true? Is it the Labour Party? Has it been taken over? I think the younger people within the Labour Party, and maybe the more affluent people, are concerned about particular issues, and the issues that they're concerned about are very important, but they're not as important as issues that quote unquote working class people would be working people would be concerned with. But they don't have to be different issues. So this thing about wokeness, it's used as a cudgel. It's used as a stick to beat people. Oh, you're not woke enough. Oh, we shouldn't be watching these movies because they're not woke. The very, very small minority of people actually think this way. The vast majority of people, if you explain wokeness to them, they'll say, well, that's common decency. We respect each other. For me, wokeness is common decency. If somebody says, I'd like to be referred to using these pronouns, well, I refer to them using those pronouns. In the same way as, somebody could be called Philip, and they say, look, I'd prefer to be called Phil, or James, call me Jack. You call them by whatever name they would prefer, and it's just common decency to refer to them in that way. If somebody's called Philip and they ask me to call them Phil, and they continue to call them Philip, well, it's not really nice to do that. Common decency can't have any of that in politics. Yoni, yes. So I think it's an attempt. There is an attempt to play the culture war here. It's the anti-woke against the woke, and this is tearing the Labour Party apart. I don't think this is really the case. The Labour Party is suffering not because there are woke warriors, social media warriors. The Labour Party is losing support because it doesn't actually have a message. It doesn't have unifying message that can be used to convince people to come out and vote. Because let's look at it from his point of view. If it was true, then working class people would say, well, I'm not going to vote for the Labour Party because they're all woke. That's not why the working class people don't vote. They don't vote because they feel that the Labour Party isn't doing anything for them in their community. Look, there are no jobs at the moment. There are no communities. The community services are gutted. Young people, if they don't have some services, they'll be. If they don't have some services to provide support to them, they'll resort to crime. It's nothing to do with wokeness. It's nothing to do with social justice warriors or anything like that. These people in the media are quite loud, but their impact in society, I think, is extremely limited. Son of Viking, thank you so much for the super chat. The opposite of woke is asleep. You decide. Well said. That's what the Tories do. We want to be asleep. Some of them, like Jacob Rees-Mogg, follow that through literally in the House of Commons. Literally falling asleep in the House of Commons. But yes, I think this is more of a distraction. It's an attempt to say, look, he has an axe to grind with these people. Perhaps they, made him feel uncomfortable about some of his comments, and he wants to get back at them and say, look, these people are the problem. These people are not the problem. They potentially are a problem in some way, but it's completely blown out of proportion. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream, so I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who came on the stream tonight for smashing the like button. Thank you so much for that. Don't go yet because we have our one for the road. Thanks to everyone who sent a super chat, greatly appreciated. If you're on Discord, on Patreon, you can also get onto Discord and you'll have access to the post-stream chat. So we'll have a chat about what's happening at the moment and try and maybe have a look at some new countings coming in, or maybe they've all been stopped. I don't know. But let's jump to the one for the road, and also a huge thank you to the moderators for doing a great job tonight.
Everybody.
Let me turn down the volume a bit. Okay.
Well, thanks everybody for voting me back in. And Yvonne Jada woman that ran about the streets like an angry Avon lady that tried to confront me yesterday, she get 46 votes. That's what happens when you're a fash. That's what happens to racists. 46 people. Imagine going out your bed to vote for her. Well, hen, you've been telt. Ram it, Bunty. See you out in the caravan, lassies.
So it's true. There was Nicola Sturgeon was confronted by Jada Frazen, who was a member of Britain First, and she called Nicola Sturgeon a fascist. It's like projection. And she ended up with 47 votes. I think what Nicola Sturgeon should have done at the time was to say, I want to congratulate her on winning 4,700 votes. And they said, no, not 40. Oh, I'm sorry, not 4,700, 47. Somebody commented on social media. She must have a big family. So guys, thanks once again for coming on the stream tonight. Thanks for all of your comments. Thanks for smashing the like button. You can support the channel by becoming a patron, but don't worry, you can also support the channel by sharing videos on social media. That's a great way to also support the channel. Thanks for everyone for their super chats, and I'll see you all on Tuesday. So have a great weekend. Stay safe, and as Boris Johnson always says, stay alert. I'll see you on Tuesday, same bat time, same bat channel, 9:30 British summertime. Have a great weekend. I'll see you soon. Take care. Good night, guys.